Welcome everyone to December's Career Talks on Jobs That Help the Environment. Today we will have three special guests joining us today to talk about their careers and the different paths that they've taken to get to where they are today. So let's start off with Mike. Just tell us your name, your job title, and where you're currently working at.
Michael Brandt. I am the Water Resources Manager for Cascade Water Alliance in Bellevue, Washington.
Okay. Dominique?
I'm Dominique Rosario, and I am the Environmental Education Coordinator AmeriCorps member at Billy Frank Jr. Nisqually National Wildlife Refuge in Olympia.
And then
Hi, I'm Pam Fehrman. I work for the City of Bellevue Parks Department, and I'm the Planning and Development Capital Project Manager.
Perfect. Welcome. Second question, what's your educational background? And then let's start off.
I have a BA and an MS from Western Kentucky University. My master's degree is from the Department of Geography with an emphasis on natural resource conservation.
I have a Bachelor's of Arts in a double major in Spanish and Environmental Studies from Southwestern University, which is right outside of Austin in Texas.
And I returned as an older student to the University of Washington and have a Bachelor of Arts in Landscape Architecture.
Great. And then next question, did you take high school courses that are related to the career that you're currently in?
Not really, no. They really didn't have such courses back then, at least where I went to school. So not directly. I mean, of course, there's a core science curriculum, and that's important, but not precisely what I'm doing now, no.
I also did not take those classes. There were environmental science classes in my high school, but I didn't think I wanted to do environmental or something in the environment when I was in high school. So I took classes that interested me. I took an anatomy course and other fun courses that I thought would just be interesting. And then later found out that I wanted to do more environmental related things.
And I went to Interlake High School here in Bellevue. And I guess the closest course that I had to what I pursued from an educational perspective was an architectural drafting class. And that spurred my interest certainly in the architect portion of the work that I get to do. Not so much from an environmental, unless you count probably what a basic biology type of class, but that there was not really, when I went to high school many eons ago, that I'll say an emphasis on environmental education. So that's probably the closest you'd come, the architectural drafting course.
Yeah, great, thank you. And then next question, we're just trying to get more insight on your job. So what does your day-to-day activities look like?
Well, I manage a suite of programs designed around water efficiency and promoting the value of water to residents, students, regular people for 5 East Side cities and 2 water utilities. So a lot of it is, frankly, what I call program administration. There's just a lot of things happening at once, lots of little decisions to be made on a daily basis. But almost nothing I do is really in a vacuum, or very little of it is only on my own. I'm working with other people. We're problem solving, figuring things out, figuring out ways where we can advance some sort of idea or project we're working on, or some sort of problem we're trying to solve. So lots of daily interactions with people, spend a lot of time in front of a computer like this, but then a lot of reading as well, a bit of data management and so forth, and then just kind of bureaucratic things like contract administration and reporting on certain activities, documenting things, capturing data, things like that. It's way more exciting than it sounds.
So I am an AmeriCorps member, which means that I'm employed by AmeriCorps, which is an organization that kind of sends out people to different service sites around Washington and around the rest of the country. So my service site is in Olympia, but they have them all across the United States. And so they're set terms, they're 10.5-month terms. And my specific position is in the environmental sector. It's doing environmental education. So I educate students about the wildlife refuge that that my site is at, and also just about the plants and animals of the area and the amazing things that we have in Washington and in the South Sound that they might not know about, just kind of bringing the wildlife, the wonders of wildlife to their classroom or when they come out to the refuge to that field trip. So my day-to-day definitely varies. I spend a lot of time outside, which is my favorite part about being an environmental educator, walking trails with students, catching bugs in the pond, just doing a bunch of different tasks. But I also do spend some time indoors, so it's a nice balance. I type up lesson plans and coordinate with teachers to make sure everything is ready for us to go into the classroom that next day, and just a bunch of random things that come up throughout the day. So it's really fun.
Let's see, day to day. I'm in a managerial position, so I have a group of staff that I work for. The Parks Department in Bellevue has 2,800 acres, about 78 parks, and I don't know how many playgrounds, community centers, and our work involves supporting educational programs, art programs, recreational type of programs within the City of Bellevue. We have like 90 miles of trails. And what our group does from a capital perspective is plan and develop best ways to serve the community. That does involve development sometimes, and it also is looking at conserving tree canopy across the city. As a project manager, I think one of the things I love most about what I do is both the flexibility of the type of work that we get to do. I guess I'm a little disappointed as an adult, or I would have been disappointed when I chose this career, at how much writing that I have to do as far as explaining and documenting. And I think it's what, Mike, you referenced, the bureaucratic record keeping and reporting that you have to do. However, this morning I got up and I had to be out at a park site and take a look at what kind of removing invasive species from a park, and who was going to manage making that renovation or refurbishment happen. So I was down at Maidenbower Bay Park. I met with some granting agencies to discuss how we might make improvements within the park system at the City of Bellevue and how their contributions might assist us in doing that. And then I'm at this meeting today. I think what I love about it is the flexibility and how the work varies throughout the day. So it's always something new and always something that we as a group are trying to figure out how to move forward and improve the community that we live in.
Awesome, thank you. And then next question, what influenced you to go into this profession? Did you have a specific mentor that showed you this kind of work, or was there a specific college class that you took?
I had no specific, I had no mentor, no. And I really can't point to one thing, but ever since I was very young, I always loved being outside. I loved the natural environment, wildlife, mountains and forests and things like that. So it was just kind of a natural fit for me to move into this field. There's no epiphany moment or anything, great story associated with it. It's just, it was very natural fit for me.
I think mine was pretty similar. Growing up, I went to Montessori school until 2nd grade, and I worked in the garden, and I learned about composting and recycling. And I just remember being outside a lot. But I would go home every day and I would tell my parents, we need to turn the water off when we're not using it, and we need to turn the lights off when we leave the room, and just like little things like that. And I didn't know that that was something you could do as a career when I got older. When I got into college, I still had no idea what I wanted to do, and I was just scrolling through the list of majors that my school offered and stumbled upon environmental studies and realized that was kind of all of the things that I had been passionate about throughout my life, and found it to be a really good fit. However, the environmental sector is so wide. There's so many things that you can do, and I realized that I really liked educating others about why they should be environmentally conscious and how amazing our planet is. And that's kind of how I stumbled upon environmental education, and doing internships in college really helped me to figure that out.
Let's see. I think my first interest was probably urban planning. I had an urban planning course in college, and I liked the organization and the thought process behind urban planning and what that meant from an environmental perspective, as well as how we organized our community, allowing certain uses in certain places and not in others, and how we could go about preserving our natural environment as part of that. I started down the urban planning part. I started pursuing that, and then realized that that was a little too philosophical. It wasn't appealing to me. I needed or wanted something a little bit more concrete. And so it felt like a natural step sideways to go to landscape architecture that is a little bit more design oriented and a little bit more concrete from the perspective that when you finish a project, assuming that the project gets to move forward, that there really is something in place. I'm not saying that words don't get us there. I just didn't have an affinity for the urban planning type of work, I guess.
Thank you. Next question. What challenges have you faced into getting to where you are today, if any?
Well, challenges. There are challenges all the time. Okay, I can answer this one. The challenge, the biggest challenge for me and what I do, and kind of, I guess, getting to where I am, is we live in a very water-rich area. Most people don't think of Western Washington as a place where you need to be very concerned about water conservation or water waste or anything like that. And so I came to this organization, well, several years ago, and was able to carve out this little slice of my universe here that I manage. And it wasn't always easy to convince people that this is something that we need to do. This is something that a water utility should be promoting, particularly because over time, our water usage in in the region, in the Puget Sound region, it has actually decreased quite a bit, even as the population increases. Counterintuitive. But we see water decreasing, and so that kind of raises questions like, oh, do we even need to care about this anymore? And there are good reasons why we should care. But that's sort of an institutional kind of a challenge that I've had to face and work through in my career.
Well, for me, one of the biggest challenges was graduating during COVID. I graduated right at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. And luckily, I was able to keep my job. But it did cut a lot of the programs that I was doing in each of those jobs for obvious reasons. And so that was hard to start out. But also looking for jobs was a lot harder because not a lot of people were hiring. So it was just kind of tough there. But in the environmental education sector, it's really hard to get a full-time job right out of college. And that was something I didn't realize. And my parents were really excited for me to graduate and get a full-time job and start making a lot of money, and that just wasn't the case. But doing seasonal work was actually one of my favorite things because it allowed me to travel a lot of different places and try a lot of different things. But it also did bring along struggles of worrying about where I was going to be next and what job I was going to have, and sometimes being a little lonely because I was in a new place where I didn't know anybody. But of course, it all comes with, there's good and bad and everything. But yeah, so those are some of the biggest things for me.
Let's see, challenges. I think probably the biggest challenge was just finding my way to the job that I have. A lot of project management, when you're working in capital development type of projects, it has a tendency to be a rather male-dominated field, and it remains that way today. I think that's definitely challenging, but I think it posed a little bit of difficulty when on construction sites representing owner or development. You run into some issues sometimes. Like I said, that's hugely changed from when I first started my career. Wow, challenges. I guess the biggest challenge I face today is sometimes just having patience with, I want to say, bureaucracy and inefficiencies you see, and you can see or you can feel what would make something, a project or development or, permitting for a city. And there's, I'll just say, a certain amount of bureaucracy that you have to work through. And I understand that bureaucracy helps focus, and this doesn't get, sometimes I wish I was in a kingdom, I guess, and there was a king that said, just do it. But I think that's probably the biggest challenge that I face today, is that I've, my patience has become more limited.
Great, thank you. Next question. What advice would you give a student pursuing this career? What should they consider now that they're in high school, and what opportunities should they be looking at before entering a career?
Okay, good question. I would encourage students to think really hard, spend time actively thinking, not just in the back of your mind, but what do you really want to do? What do you want to do with your life? And not only that, I would put it more in the I wish when I was younger, I'd put things more in the context of what problem do you want to solve? Because that's really what work life ends up being for the most part. Every day you have a pile of problems and you have to figure out a way to solve them. So I would start thinking about things that way. And as much as you can to get a good idea of where you think you want to go and begin pursuing that as soon as you can. However, while still remaining flexible in that, because there's nothing wrong with changing your mind. You can plan on doing that in your career at some point. So that's a good thing, I think, to get used to as well. That there's nothing wrong with making a hard right or hard left turn at some point. So pursuing, working vigorously towards some sort of objective, but understanding that it's okay if you need to change at some point. What was the second half of the question?
What should they consider now that they're in high school, and what opportunities should they be looking at? So internships, jobs.
Well, internships are a great thing to do if you possibly can do that. If you have an opportunity for some sort of summertime work or extended, really make good use of your summers. Be careful with your summers. Yeah, sure, you need to have a little downtime and some fun and all of that, but summers can be an amazing time to acquire valuable experience. And I'm sure with career tracks at schools, they help you with those kinds of opportunities. I would be really active with anything like that. Any kind of internship you can get is fine. Temporary job is fine. Volunteer work, just with an organization. There are plenty of great organizations out there, nonprofits, and they always need help. The work may not be glamorous, but you'll still get something from it. But just really try to maximize the use of my time, if I could.
Yeah, I would say just try a bunch of things. I think for me, I knew what I did not want to do more so than what I did want to do. And I felt really frustrated with that. But now I realize that was actually really helpful because it prevented me from getting stuck in a career or a job that I didn't really like. I did a study abroad experience and I worked my butt off to get as much of it paid for as possible with a bunch of scholarships. And I studied abroad in Panama, doing environmental research out there, and learned that I wanted to do something in the environment, but I didn't want to do research. And I found that was really helpful for me because that was a big part of the field. And then did a couple other internships that led me down the environmental education path. So internships are great. I also did a lot of volunteer work every now and then, not super consistent, but I did a lot of trail maintenance work and invasive species removal and like trash pickup days. And that all kind of steered me toward getting to where I am today too, because that was something I was really passionate about, and it made me realize that this was maybe something I wanted to do in the future. And then since graduating from college, just doing a bunch of seasonal work and temporary jobs, which made me feel really good because I knew that if I didn't like it, it was temporary and there was an end date in sight, and then I could try something else. Luckily, I have liked all of the things that I've done, but I know for some people, they try it and they're like, this is not what I want to do, and then they try something else, and that's really helpful for them. So I would just try as much as you can. Just even if it's not in the environmental field, just try different things.
I would have to agree, be prepared for testing and changing. I think I previously described my switch left. I would highly recommend looking into landscape architecture, the breadth and width of what the field type of work that the field allows you to pursue or exposes you to is tremendous. I couldn't be happier with my lefts and rights that eventually got me here because of the flexibility of the type of work and the variety of work that I personally get to do. While in high school, I think I would probably suggest volunteering, whether you're paid or whether you're volunteering, and the City of Bellevue has a lot of opportunities, whether you're talking about trail building or educational programs, environmental educational programs that you would actually participate in and run, or whether you're talking about cleanup or removing invasive species, working with park rangers during the summer. There are a tremendous number of opportunities, soup to nuts. So I'd just like to put that out there if you're looking for something like that. Other than that, like I said, I underline the fact, just try a lot of different things, because what makes you happy and what you're most satisfied in doing will ultimately serve you well and make you a much happier person because it's something that you're going to do for a very long time.
Yeah, thank you for that. Next question: what is a memorable experience that you've had since getting into this profession?
Well, I've had lots of memorable experiences. Let me think here. Maybe one of the best experiences I've had is the relationship I built with the environmental horticulture program at Lake Washington Institute of Technology, which is a community college up the road here from me in Kirkland. Great school and great program, environmental hort. I knew the gentleman who began that program and who ran that program. He was up there for many years, and I just because I knew him and would see him occasionally, I would always remind him that he has a great program up there, but you don't really have a lot of water related content in your program. Environmental horticulture is a big field. It concerns a lot of things. They didn't really do too much specific with water. And so over the course of time, he kind of came around to that idea. And long story fairly short is I worked with them and still work with them, but worked with them over a number of years to create new programming, additional content that goes into what they teach now. As a matter of fact, we actually built it up enough where they have a new independent certificated program there at the school called Sustainable Landscape Technologies. And it's about some of these very specific kinds of topics related to sustainable landscaping. Some people call it green landscaping. But we were able to build a whole new program around that. I also was able to receive from irrigation companies all of the hardware needed to install an irrigation system, a lawn sprinkler system, because that's very important for students who are interested, who are in that field, to understand how those work. And the students themselves actually installed it with the help of a professional that I work with and had hired to do that. And it happened during the school year. It was about this time of year, actually, some years ago. And they had torrential rain for days and days. And the students were out there for 3 or 4 days in a row, digging and installing this irrigation system in the pouring rain. And, got to talk to a lot of them about it. It made quite an impact on them. I think some of them learned, yeah, this is a cool thing. I like this. And some probably learned, I don't want any part of this. This is not what I want to do. But either way, that's a very valuable experience, great learning experience for them. But anyway, I point to that as one of the highlights of the past 10 years or so for me, is working with Lake Washington Tech to extend what I do into a learning institution, and just the idea of embedding learning, teaching about the value of water into other areas.
For me, I think it would be learning about new areas. I'm originally from Austin, Texas, and so I moved to Colorado and learned about Rocky Mountain ecology and the plants and animals out there. And then I moved here and I'm learning about the South Sound and the estuary, and just learning a lot more about the plants and animals in the area and educating others about them as well. And having these experiences out in nature with students that are positive. And recently we've been working with students about water quality, and we brought water bugs out to the schools, and they were able to use microscopes to look at them closer and identify them. And we talked about how they were connected to water quality, and watching the students' faces light up when they identified the bug, and going from thinking they were gross to a little bit cool, and asking us where they can get their own microscope because they wanted to do it at home. So just really seeing students' faces light up when we educate them about the area that they're in, and learning a lot more as an educator.
Well, let's see. Memorable. I feel like I have a lot of memorable. Oftentimes when you're talking about capital development projects, when you're talking about public outreach processes and getting people, bringing the community, educating the community, asking the community what they want to see to improve, either from an urban forestry perspective or new development of a park facility. There's a long time from beginning of project to end of project. We can have a 3 to 4 public outreach and permitting just for a concept of what is going to be developed or how we're going to pursue a new project. And so it's not unusual that 10 years, 20 years down the path that you actually get to see a phase of a park or a concept actually brought to fruition. And I think every time that we come to that point, it seriously feels like what cherry on the top of a sundae, when you feel like you can actually concretely see and feel something that has been improved, whether that's a new facility, like I said, or whether that's, a cleanup of a certain area, or whether that's taking a hard shoreline and being able to soften it and allow, public access to a space. When that happens, I think that it's thrilling. It feels like a real accomplishment. And like I said, sometimes that's 40 years, 40 years from beginning of project to end, and sometimes longer, and sometimes shorter, but I think that's really a highlight. It's got to be a highlight for me.
Great, thank you. And then our last question, how has COVID impacted your job? Do you think these changes will continue post-COVID?
Well, it's in fact impacted my job profoundly. I'm sitting here today. I could turn I got my background on there, but if I turn my camera, you can see it's dark in my office. I'm the only one here today. That's how we do it nowadays. There's only one of us who comes in. We trade off shifts, and one of us comes in. So we used to have a vibrant workplace, and we'd have in-person meetings all day long, and it was very, very different. Now I'm at home most of the time, as are a lot of people. So yeah, it's affected what I do profoundly, and I don't expect that to change. I think we're experiencing a sea change right now with respect to how we work in the modern world. And so, yeah, I think a lot of us are going to be primarily working alone for the foreseeable future. I think for many industries, many businesses, it probably will never go back to exactly how it was before. So yeah, big change. But I think what we've discovered, though, is we can still make it work, and that's what's really nice about technology. 20 years ago, boy, I don't know, we would be in a real fix, without technologies like these to enable us to still get our work done. But yeah, so things have changed significantly and will remain that way, I think.
Yeah, so COVID has also impacted my job. Luckily, I do work outside most of the time, and so it has felt a little bit more normal for me, which has helped my sanity level. But the biggest impact has been working with children. Right now, schools don't want to put their kids on a bus any more than they have to, so we aren't having any field trips right now. But we are starting to be allowed to work with children at their schools, which is really nice. But for the majority of my time working during COVID, it's been a lot less busy because all of the programs, or at least most of the programs, have been cut. However, one benefit to COVID that I have experienced is increased creativity. So because we've had to do a lot of things online, or a lot of things that don't require materials that you touch, we've had to become a lot more creative and come up with new tools for students to use and the public to use that can still engage them and get them excited about the environment. And I think that will definitely continue, because it's going to help us when things don't go the way that we think they will. If things start going back to more in person, and then all of a sudden we have to do things not in person, we'll be ready. We'll have those tools available, and it won't be as much of a stressful rush to get everything ready. So I think that was the best thing for environmental education, at least, that came out of COVID. But it has definitely impacted a lot of things.
Yes, COVID has definitely impacted work. I want to say that the park department has, depending on the season we're talking about, has something like 200 employees in the city of Bellevue. And that can be anything from lifeguards during the summer to people who are running educational programs at the Mercer Slough Environmental Education Center. Certainly our park programs were curtailed initially, and they're just now coming back online, certainly with masks and with an emphasis on being out of doors. And then if you're looking at an operation and maintenance perspective, certainly those 2,800 acres need care and maintaining. And so and yet another portion of the city's park staff has continued working as far as the operation and maintenance goes, but they're checking in online. My job has become a not report to City Hall. I am working from home. I hope that we can get more into the office soon. From a development perspective, we're dealing with the increased costs of COVID that they've brought. Contractors, when working on projects, need to account for their COVID costs, whether that's testing or masking, or what kind of reporting they have to do. We have supply chain issues and material shortages that we're dealing with, that we need, that we're so projects are just much more expensive. So soup to nuts, it is continuing. I'd like to think that I'm sure everyone would like to think that we'll come to an end, that this will be nothing more than I'll say a common cold soon. I'd hope. All right, that's it.
Great, thank you. And then that does it for all our questions. Let's see. It doesn't look like there's any questions in the chat. I did have one question. Knowing what you know today, is there something that you would have done differently to get to where you are now?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, there's probably several things I would have done differently earlier, but I can't really point to a single kind of thing. I think I'd have to think about that one for a while. I did have just a few general thoughts, though, Jose. If you are interested, I could share with that might be of some interest.
Yeah, for sure.
Your attendees. I've just been thinking as we're talking here, for students who want to go into environmental field, what you might think about studying in addition to your specific area of interest. If you had the opportunity to take any classes or do any sort of studies of governance, models of governance, which is to say how governments operate, how they actually get things done. And actually that would be something to respond to your question, Jose, that I would do differently. Yeah, I would have spent more time and just learn, we usually use bureaucracy as a pejorative. We all hate bureaucracy, but the fact is bureaucracy is just how government works. There has to be an organizational structure to things. You can't do things in an atmosphere of chaos. So, but to learn how those work, not the most exciting use of your time, but your city councils meet, probably every week or two, and those are all televised. They're all online right now. So just, you might tune in sometime and just see the process of how an idea goes from that, just an idea or a problem that has arisen, to some sort of solution that is effective to deal with it. It is important to have some understanding about those things. Yeah, I would do this too if I were younger. If I could go back, I would learn more about economics and finance. Doesn't matter what you want to do. Having some grounding in economics and finance will serve you well, I'm sure. Writing, technical writing, really can't overstate the importance of that. Just being able to express yourself well in writing is extremely important, and that's something I didn't know how to do when I first started. I learned it over time, but it would be great to have some experience in that when you're beginning. A specific thing for probably pretty much any area of environmental study or work, GIS. There's nothing nowadays that doesn't utilize GIS in some manner. And I had a little GIS training when I was in college, and you can't go wrong with that. That would be a good use of your time. For any whatever you're interested in, whatever field you think you want to go into, there is a professional organization for that field. Whatever it is, no matter how esoteric, there is some professional organization for whatever it is you're interested in. So I would encourage you to search that out, to research that, find out what are the professional organizations that are out there. So for me, for example, this is the Journal of the American Water Works Association, the AWWA. That's the main drinking water organization in the United States. So it's number one, it's just kind of good to know the organization that is out there. You know the acronyms, you kind of know about what they do and so forth. They produce, those kinds of organizations will produce the most current, up-to-date literature and research on whatever the field is. And very importantly, most of them have finally figured out, it wasn't always this way, but they figured out now it's a really good idea to cultivate young people to come into the field rather than just let people stumble in after they're out of college. And so most of those have programs to help get students involved in that field, in that whatever the discipline is. There are programs to do that. Even a journal like this will usually have a student rate. So I would encourage you to do that for whatever it is you're interested in. And also, kind of along those lines, there's probably, for whatever it is you're interested in, there's probably one seminal work, maybe one or two or three key works that some author has written over time that help to advance the field in some way. So in my case, there's a really important book written a number of years ago called Cadillac Desert. And it's all about the development of water in the Western United States. It's just a fantastic read. I highly encourage anybody to read it. If you have any interest in any kind of environmental field, this is a great book. But it's the kind of critical work in my field. And I think it came out in 1992, and you'll still hear people refer to this. If somebody writes a book today, it might be compared. If it's a good book, it might be compared to this one. So it's just good. It would be good for your career development to know what those kinds of works are and to familiarize yourself with them. And I might have other point or two, but I don't want to take up all our remaining time, so I'll stop.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else want to share anything? If not, that's going to be our time for today.
You can go ahead, Pamela, if you have something. I don't think I have anything for that point.
I don't. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you all for coming, being part of this